August 1942. German panzers rolled toward the Volga River, confident they'd crush the Soviets in weeks. But by February 1943, over 300,000 German soldiers were dead or captured. What happened? The answer lies in frozen steel and a winter that turned the Wehrmacht's greatest strength into its deadliest weakness. When Operation Barbarossa launched in June 1941, German tanks dominated the Eastern Front. The panzer divisions seemed unstoppable. But Hitler made a catastrophic miscalculation. He believed the Soviet Union would collapse before winter. So when German forces pushed towards Stalingrad in the summer of 1942, they were still wearing summer uniforms, and their tanks had no winterization equipment. The temperature would soon drop to -40 degrees Celsius. And the German war machine was about to freeze solid. Here's what the cold did to German tanks. Tank lubricants froze completely, engines wouldn't start, fuel lost efficiency, and in extreme cold, gasoline wouldn't even ignite below -42 Celsius. Diesel engines seized up overnight. German crews were forced to light fires under their panzers just to keep the engines from cracking. But it gets worse. The narrow tracks on German tanks, designed for European roads, sank helplessly into snow that exceeded 1.5 meters deep. Reconnaissance reports from the Soviet 20th Army confirmed it. German tanks couldn't move off the roads. They were trapped, immobilized, sitting ducks. Meanwhile, Soviet T-34 tanks were built for this nightmare. The T-34 had wider tracks that distributed weight across snow and mud. It used a diesel engine that, while still affected by cold, was more reliable than German gasoline engines. And here's the genius part. The T-34 had a compressed air system that stirred diesel fuel in the tanks to prevent freezing. It had special fuel filters that removed ice particles. German tanks had nothing like this. Soviet tankers could maneuver freely across the frozen steppe, while German panzers sat frozen in place, waiting to be destroyed. The numbers tell the brutal story. By mid-November 1942, more German soldiers were hospitalized with frostbite than combat wounds. The 24th Panzer Division had 110 tanks sitting in repair shops, not because they were destroyed in battle, but because there were no spare parts to fix them in the freezing conditions. Supply trains couldn't get through. Roads turned to sludge, then froze into impassable ice. The German Sixth Army was receiving less than half its required daily supplies even before winter fully hit. And then came Operation Uranus. On November 19, 1942, Soviet forces launched their counteroffensive through heavy snow and fog. They targeted the weak Romanian and Hungarian forces on the German flanks. These Allied troops were even more poorly equipped for winter than the Germans. Within days, the Soviets had encircled the entire German Sixth Army at Stalingrad, over 300,000 men trapped in a frozen pocket. The Germans tried a desperate rescue. Operation Winter Storm in December 1942 sent the 4th Panzer Army to break the encirclement. But the deep snow, ravines and gullies stopped them cold. The few tanks that could move were ambushed by Soviet forces who knew how to fight in winter. The relief effort failed completely. Inside the Stalingrad pocket, conditions became apocalyptic. Temperatures stayed below -30 degrees. German tanks were useless. Frozen monuments scattered across the ruins. Soldiers burned furniture, books, anything to stay alive. The Luftwaffe promised to supply the trapped army by air, but cargo planes crashed in the brutal weather. More aircraft were destroyed by accidents than by Soviet fighters. By February 2, 1943, the German Sixth Army surrendered. Of the 300,000 men encircled, only 91,000 survived to become prisoners. Most of them would never return home. The Battle of Stalingrad marked the turning point of World War II on the Eastern Front, and it wasn't just Soviet courage that won the battle. It was winter. It was engineering. It was the T-34 tank moving through snow while German panzers sat frozen and helpless. The lesson was clear. Superior technology means nothing if it can't function in the environment where you're fighting. The Germans had learned this the hard way, and the cost was the destruction of an entire army.